Coexistence of Homebrew and pyenv on MacOSX Yosemite. Several newbie questions about coexistence of Homebrew and pyenv on MacOSX Yosemite. These are the things that I am still confused about after applying my level of Google Fu to the subject. Sorry for the length, but I wanted to be as clear as possible. First, some background. I used Brew to install pyenv, then pyenv to install Python 2 and Python 3. Question, or clarification. If Brew is using a Python installed by pyenv, I assume that this is frowned on because Brew packages would be built with a dependency on something outside of Brew. For example, using pyenv to uninstall a Python version could break Brew packages. It appears that Brew uses whichever Python comes first in the path, currently pyenv's version for me. However, in each of the below cases the shims are for Python rather than Python 3, even for pyenv 3.4.3. Am I correct then in assuming that setting pyenv shell 3.4.3 will make Brew link Python commands, that it assumes are for Python 2.x, to pyenv's Python 3.4.3, which I guess would tend to mess things up. Question. If using pyenv's Pythons to Brew with is a bad idea, then should I also install brewed versions of Python and Python 3, or would this conflict and cause problems in some way? In the first case, I could just make sure to call pyenv shell system before any brewing, or set some alias to automate this as others have suggested, alias brew equals in path equals $path $pyenv root /shims : brew. However, this means I have to use the rather outdated system Python. If instead I were to also use Brew to install Python 2 and Python 3, would this conflict with versions installed using pyenv in any way, or will Brew's Pythons live happily completely separate from pyenv's? I think this is true, but I want to double check before I try it. Would this give me a setup where all my brewing use Brew's Python or Python 3? I assume I still need an alias such as that above to make sure pyenv's versions are not found first in my path, and everything else outside of Brew would use pyenv's Pythons. Is this a bad idea for any reason? For example, consider the scenario where I want to use Brew to install boostpython with Python 3 bindings. Does this require a Brew Python 3 version, and will it subsequently work for a different pyenv version of Python 3.x? If I only have pyenv's versions installed, does the with Python 3 flag even work in this case? On the other hand, if I have Brew's Python 3 installed in addition to pyenv's, I assume with Python 3 will link against Brew's Python 3, with above alias. If so, will boostpython even be usable when called from a Python session running pyenv's version? Not sure if this is more appropriate as a question about boostpython itself, or is this completely fine? Opinions regarding some links for Brew that point to pyenv Pythons. Another post suggested some linking pyenv's Pythons so Brew can find them. Besides the obvious caveat that Brew now depends on Pythons that it does not itself manage, is there anything horribly wrong with this idea?
A clarification, Homebrew uses system Python whenever it doesn't make a difference exactly which Python 2.7 it uses, which is pretty common. If you build something with Python, that will use the first Python and path, if that Python is Python 2.7. Otherwise, Homebrew will install and use Homebrew Python. I would not expect that you will find it necessary to install Homebrew's Python and Python 3, but nothing bad should happen if you do. Note that if you use pip or easy_install to install a package that installs scripts, Like IPython, those scripts are written so that the package will always be invoked with the Python against which it was installed. You can always get around this behavior by running packages like python (mypython). Otherwise, you can control which Python you're using just by setting $path. Building boostpython against whatever Python 3.4 will work with any other Python 3.4. It will probably not work with Python 3.5. This used to be more complicated, but it isn't anymore. So linking your pyenv pythons into /user/local shouldn't hurt but doesn't do anything except put them in $path. It won't help Homebrew find them otherwise.
I'll try to answer each of your questions. 1. Does Brew frown upon using pyenv's Python rather than Brew's? In short, yes. They lay out the whole story here, and in short you're on your own to manage issues that come up. 2. Will Brew Python and pyenv Python conflict? No. As Tim Smith says in another answer, nothing bad should happen if you do. Use your path to manage which Python you, or an application, sees, and this is what pyenv does. 3 packages with Python dependency satisfied by Brew Python working with ousted Python from pyenv. As Tim said, this shouldn't be a problem. 4. Use some links so that we only use pyenv Python. I think you're referring to this post, and it's a fun idea, but likely perilous for maintenance. For you, I'm doing this now. I lay out how to do it here.
If you want to see more, please consider subscribing.